I used to believe that a mother's place in her child's life was permanent, etched somewhere deeper than blood, deeper than memory. I was wrong. That morning began like so many others, quiet and ordinary, the kind of day that gives no warning before it breaks you. I woke up early, as I always did, my body trained by decades of responsibility. Even after retirement, even after my knees began to ache, and my hands trembled in the cold, I still rose before the sun. Habit, I told myself. Purpose, if I was being honest. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator. My son and his wife were still asleep upstairs. I moved carefully through the kitchen, not wanting to make noise ironic, considering I no longer felt like I belonged there. I made tea the way I always did. 2 teaspoons of sugar, a splash of milk. As the water boiled, my mind wandered, as it often did, back through the years. I remembered holding my son for the first time, his tiny fingers curling around mine, as if I were the only solid thing in the world. I remembered the nights I stayed awake when he was sick, the mornings I skipped meals so he could have seconds, the jobs I worked that broke my back but kept a roof over our heads. I told myself it was all worth it. Mothers always do. By late morning, I decided to go out for a short walk. The air was crisp, and for a while, I let myself feel almost peaceful. I didn't know that peace was already being packed into trash bags behind my back. When I returned home, something felt wrong the moment I stepped onto the driveway. The front door was open. I never left it open. Inside, the house smelled different, cold, distant, unfamiliar. My eyes were drawn to the living room, and that's when I saw them. Black garbage bags. At first, my mind refused to understand. I stood there, frozen, staring as if the scene might rearrange itself into something reasonable. Then one of the bags shifted slightly, and a corner of faded blue fabric slipped out, my sweater, the one I wore every winter, the one I had mended myself when money was tight. I dropped my purse. My legs felt weak as I walked closer, my heart pounding louder with every step. I opened one bag with shaking hands, praying I was mistaken. I wasn't. My clothes, my books, old photographs bent and cracked. Letters tied with a ribbon, letters from my late husband, letters I reread whenever the nights grew too long. My medicine, my shoes, pieces of my life, tossed together like they meant nothing. Like asterisk, I asterisk meant nothing. "What is this?" I whispered, though no one answered. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. My son came down first. He wouldn't look at me, not once. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor, his shoulders stiff, his face pale. Behind him came his wife, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line of impatience. I searched my son's face, desperate for an explanation. A mistake? A misunderstanding? Anything? He said nothing. His wife sighed, clearly annoyed, as if asterisk I asterisk were the problem for not understanding what should have been obvious. "We don't need you anymore," she said flatly. "Go away." The words hit harder than any slap ever could. I looked at my son. Is this true? My voice sounded small, like it didn't belong to me. He swallowed. "Mom, it's for the best. For the best. After everything, I wanted to scream. I wanted to remind him of every sacrifice, every promise, every night I chose him over myself. I wanted to ask how love could be thrown out so easily, but I didn't. Something inside me broke, and in its place, something else formed. Something cold, something steady. I bent down and slowly tied the open garbage bag closed. My hands stopped shaking. "Is there anything else?" I asked calmly. They both stared at me, surprised. Perhaps they expected tears. Begging, guilt, I gave them none. I picked up my phone from the table. The screen lit up, reflecting my face older, tired, but not defeated. As I walked toward the door, my son finally spoke. "Mom." I turned back and smiled at him, not the warm smile I used to give, not the one that forgave everything. This one was quiet, controlled. "You threw me away," I said softly. "Remember that?" Then I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, leaving my past in garbage bags and my future in my own hands. And as I walked away, I made a decision. They would regret this day, not because I would beg them to, but because I never would. I didn't look back when I reached the end of the driveway. The sky was pale, almost indifferent, as if the world had decided not to take sides. Cars passed, neighbors went about their lives, unaware that a mother had just been erased from her own home. I stood there for a moment, holding nothing but my purse and my phone, feeling lighter in a way that frightened me. When you lose everything, there is a strange kind of clarity. I walked until my legs began to ache. Every step felt unreal, as though I were watching myself from a distance. I had spent so many years being careful, considerate, quiet. Now there was nothing left to protect. I found a bench near a small park and sat down. The wood was cold beneath me, but I welcomed it. It reminded me that I was still here, still breathing. My phone buzzed in my hand, not a call from my son, not a message asking where I had gone. Just a low battery warning. I smiled. How fitting. As the screen dimmed, memories rushed in uninvited. I saw my younger self, working 2 jobs, counting coins at the kitchen table long after midnight. I heard my son's voice as a child, asking me why I never bought new clothes for myself. Asterisk, I don't need them. Asterisk, I used to say. Asterisk, you do. Asterisk, I believed love meant disappearing quietly into someone else's life. I was wrong. I opened my contacts. My finger hovered for a moment before stopping on a name I hadn't called in years. Not because I'd forgotten them, but because I had promised myself I would only ever call if I truly needed to. I needed to now. The phone rang twice. Hello? Came the voice on the other end, steady, familiar. It's me. I said. There was a pause, then surprise and relief. I was wondering when you'd call. I'm sorry it took so long, I replied. I thought I could handle things on my own. You always do, they said gently. Where are you? I looked around the quiet park, the falling leaves, the world continuing as if nothing had changed. I'm free, I answered, but I need help. You have it. The voice said without hesitation, come, we'll take care of everything. The call ended, and with it, the last piece of doubt inside me. I stood up straighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't asking for permission. That night, I stayed in a small, clean room that wasn't filled with memories that hurt. The bed was simple, the silence was deep, and yet I slept without fear. No footsteps overhead, no tension in the air. No need to make myself smaller. In the mirror above the sink, I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Her hair was streaked with gray, her eyes lined with years of worry, but there was something else there now. Relief, I washed my face, changed into borrowed clothes, and sat on the edge of the bed. My phone lay beside me, silent. No calls, no messages. I wasn't surprised. I turned it off. The next morning, I woke early again. But this time, it wasn't habit. It was intention. I drank my tea slowly, watching sunlight spill across the floor. I thought about all the times I had swallowed my pride for the sake of peace. Peace, I realized, had never been offered to me, so I stopped offering myself. By the end of the second day, arrangements were already in motion. Papers being reviewed, accounts being checked, names remembered, favors returned, not out of revenge, but out of balance. Everything I had built had never belonged to them alone. On the 3rd morning, I stood by the window and allowed myself a small, genuine smile. They still thought I was helpless. They still believed silence meant weakness. They had no idea that my absence was about to speak louder than I ever had. And somewhere far away, in a house that no longer felt like home, they were just beginning to understand some things, once thrown away, do not come back. And some people, once dismissed, return only as memories. The first day passed quietly, too quietly. My son sat at the kitchen table where I used to place his morning coffee, staring at an empty counter. The house felt larger, colder. He told himself it was a relief, no more careful conversations, no more strained politeness, no more feeling watched. His wife moved through the rooms with quick, sharp motions, opening windows, rearranging furniture, as if space itself needed to be reclaimed. "This is better," she said. "You'll see." He nodded, though something in his chest tightened. By evening, the silence began to press in. Dinner was burned because no one remembered to turn the stove down. A small inconvenience, easily ignored, but it was the first crack. That night, my son reached for his phone. He stopped himself before dialing. Asterisk, she needs to learn. Asterisk, he told himself. Asterisk, she'll come back. Asterisk, she always had. The second day brought questions. A letter arrived in the mail addressed to me. My son opened it without thinking, then frowned. It was a bank notice. His name wasn't on it, neither was his wife's. "Did you know about this account?" he asked her. She waved it off. Probably nothing important. But when he tried to log into the online account he thought he shared with me, the password didn't work. Neither did the backup email. He told himself it was a technical issue. Then the phone rang. It was his aunt. "Where's your mother?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. She needed space. He replied carefully. There was a pause. "You should call her," she said. "She's done more for you than you realize." The call ended before he could respond. By afternoon, the unease had grown teeth, documents he needed for a work issue gone. The folder I always kept organized, labeled in my neat handwriting, was missing. His wife searched the house, irritation rising with every empty drawer. She must have taken them, she snapped. On purpose. The words stung more than he expected. That evening he finally tried calling me, straight to voicemail. He called again and again, nothing. The third day arrived with consequences. His wife stood in the kitchen, holding her phone, her face pale. "The bank won't talk to me," she said. "They say the primary holder has made changes." He felt a wave of cold wash over him. Friends stopped by. Friends who used to ask after me, who used to rely on me for introductions, favors, guidance. Their smiles were polite now, curious. "Your mother's not around." One of them asked. "That's surprising." Whispers began to spread. People remembered who I was, who I had helped, who I had protected, and suddenly my absence was louder than my presence ever had been. By evening, panic replaced pride. They searched through old messages, old calendars, trying to piece together where I might have gone. My son drove to places I used to visit, hoping, dreading, to find me there. Nothing. By nightfall, he sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "We made a mistake," he whispered. His wife didn't answer. Across towns, across miles, across a life I had stepped into without them, I sat quietly with a cup of tea, unaware of their frantic calls because my phone was still off. I wasn't hiding. I was reclaiming myself. And while they searched the country for the woman they had thrown away, I was learning a truth that took me a lifetime to accept. Some losses are not punishments. They are lessons, and some absences are not escapes. They are awakenings. They found me on the seventh day. Not because I wanted to be found, but because panic has a way of retracing its steps. It led them back through old connections, quiet favors, and names they once ignored. It led them to a place where I was no longer surviving, but standing. I saw my son before he saw me. He stood at the entrance of the small office building, thinner somehow, his shoulders curved inward like a boy again. He looked around, uncertain, as if expecting me to vanish the moment he blinked. When his eyes finally met mine, relief flooded his face so quickly it almost hurt to witness. "Mom," he breathed. I didn't rush to him. I didn't stand either. I finished my tea first, set the cup down carefully, and waited. For years I had been the one who hurried. I was done with that. He approached slowly, his wife following a few steps behind. She didn't meet my eyes. "We've been looking everywhere for you," he said. His voice cracked. "Why didn't you answer?" I studied him, really studied him, for the first time in years. Not as my child, not as someone I needed to protect, but as a man responsible for his choices. You told me to go away, I said calmly. I listened. Silence settled between us. I didn't mean it like that, he rushed to say. We were stressed. We didn't think. I know exactly what you thought, I replied. You thought I would come back. I always did. His mouth opened, then closed. Behind him, his wife finally spoke. We're sorry, she said stiffly. Let's just put this behind us. I stood then, not in anger, but in clarity. No, I said gently. You don't apologize to erase something. You apologize to acknowledge it. My son's eyes filled with tears. I need you, he whispered. The words came too late. You needed me when I was cooking your meals, I said. When I was managing your life quietly. When I was invisible. I took a step back, creating space where there had once been none. I am not angry, I continued. I am finished. That frightened them more than anger ever could. I've arranged my life, I said. I am safe, I am independent, and I am not coming back. He reached for me instinctively, then stopped himself. I raised you to stand on your own, I said softly. Now I'm finally doing the same. I turned to leave. Mom, he called after me. Can we at least talk again? I paused just once. Maybe, I said, but not as before. I walked away without tears, without shouting, without regret. Later that evening, I sat by the window of my new home, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. I thought about the woman I used to be silent, grateful for scraps of affection, afraid of being alone. She was gone. In her place stood someone who understood a simple truth. Love without respect is not love. And revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it smiles and keeps walking.